Hello everyone and welcome back to the 3T Path channel. My name is Giridhari and today we're starting a new series on a wonderful text called the Gita Mahatmya. Now Gita Mahatmya is a special text which you'll find in the Padma Purana, and it's a conversation between Shiva and Parvati. And in this conversation, Shiva is explaining to Parvati the glories of the Bhagavad-gita. That's what Gita Mahatmya means, the glories of the Bhagavad-gita. And he's describing a story that he's heard from Lord Vishnu himself. So he's describing what he's heard, and we're going to go through each of the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad-gita. And there's going to be a wonderful little story explaining the power and glory of each chapter of the Bhagavad-gita. So it's a very nice text, and it says, Shiva says that if you hear or study the Bhagavad-gita, quickly destroys all of one's sins, and one who faithfully remembers this discourse will attain the benefits of all kinds of yajnas and punya karma. So if you just hear this text of the Gita Mahatmya, you will attain the same results as doing all sorts of special rituals and special pious deeds. In addition, one will enjoy all worldly pleasures and then go to Vaikuntha, which is pretty much what everybody wants, right? You want to have a good life and at the end go back home, back to Godhead. That is the goal of all of us. So this story is, of course, written by Vyasadeva, right? Because it's in the Padma Purana, so it's Padma Purana. It's approved, it's a real official story from the Puranas. So here's the story about chapter 1. Parvati says, "My dear husband, you know all the transcendental truths, and by your mercy I have heard the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Oh my Lord, now I long to hear from you the glories of the Srimad Bhagavad-gita, which was spoken by Sri Krishna, and by hearing which one's devotion to Krishna increases." Shiva replied, "That person whose body is the color of a dark rain cloud, whose carrier is the king of birds, Garuda, and who is lying on Anantashesha, the thousand-headed serpent, that Sri Vishnu, whose glories have no limit, I am always worshipping. My dear Parvati, once Sri Vishnu had killed the demon Mura. He was resting peacefully on Anantashesha when the bestower of all good fortune of the universe, Sri Lakshmi, respectfully inquired from him, 'Bhagavan, you are the controller and the maintainer of the whole universe, but yet you are sleeping unhappily on this ocean of milk. What is the reason?' Sri Vishnu said, 'My dear Lakshmi, I am not sleeping, but I am watching how wonderfully my energy is working. And it is by this wonderful energy of mine by which I am controlling all things and yet remain separate. And it is by remembering these divine activities of mine that the great devotees and yogis manage to free themselves from the wheel of birth and death and attain transcendental transcendental nature of mind, which is eternal and free from all gunas.' Lakshmi said, 'O controller of all things, you are the goal of the meditation of great yogis. Nothing can go on without you. And yet you are separate. You are the cause of creation, maintenance, and destruction, and of all the material universes. Kindly inform me about the workings of your wonderful energies, which are so attractive that even when you are lying here, even you are lying here meditating upon them.' Sri Vishnu said, 'My dear Lakshmi, the workings of my multifold energies and how to become free from the bonds of birth and death and attain my eternal nature can only be understood by those of pure intelligence who have an inclination to render service unto me. This transcendental knowledge is fully explained in the Bhagavad-gita. Lakshmi inquired, "My dear Lord, if you are amazed by the workings of your own energy and are ever trying to fathom their limit, then how is it possible that the Bhagavad-gita can describe those unlimited energies of yours and how to cross over them and attain the transcendental nature?" Sri Vishnu said, "I myself have manifested in the form of Bhagavad-gita. Please understand that the first 5 chapters are my 5 heads. The next 10 chapters are my 10 arms. And the 16th chapter is my stomach. The last 2 chapters are my lotus feet. In this way, you should understand the transcendental deity of the Bhagavad-gita." It's very wonderful. He's saying that the Bhagavad-gita is a deity form. And we understand like that. Bhagavad-gita, Bhagavad Purana, they are held as a deity form. You can worship them in an altar. It's the form of God, actively formed. It's a literary incarnation of God, we say. So the Bhagavad-gita, he says, is my deity. This Bhagavad-gita is the destroyer of all sins. And that intelligent person who daily recites 1 chapter or even 1 shloka, which means 1 verse, or half a shloka, or at least a quarter of a shloka, will attain the same position as Susharma had attained. So who's Susharma? But wait a second. Let's just rewind here and pay attention to this very important line of the Gita Mahatmya. 1 shloka, half a shloka, or even 1/4 of a shloka of the Bhagavad-gita, quarter of a verse. You know, the shlokas are usually 4 lines. So just 1 line. If you just recite that daily, you will become purified. You'll see, you'll be attain Vaikuntha. We'll see the story of Susharma now. But Lakshmi inquired, who was Susharma? What class did he belong to? And what destination did he attain? So now let's hear the story of Susharma. This is the story of the power of chapter 1. Sri Vishnu said, "My dear Lakshmi, Susharma was a very wicked and most sinful man. He was born in a Brahmana family. His family had no Vedic knowledge. And he only took pleasure from hurting others. He never engaged in the chanting of my names, in giving charity, or receiving guests. In fact, he never performed any pious activities. For his livelihood, he collected leaves and sold them in the bazaar. He especially enjoyed drinking wine and eating flesh. In this way, he passed his life. One day, that foolish Susharma had gone to the garden of one sage for collecting leaves when a snake bit him and he died. After his death, he was cast into many hells where he suffered for a long time, after which he attained the body of a bull. So that's how it works in the Vedic system. You have a sinful life, a very sinful life, you commit many atrocities, and then you have to go through hell, or different hells. There's hundreds of thousands of different hellish experiences. And so people have to go through like these different, depending on what they did, so they can learn from their mistake. And they spend some time there suffering horribly, so he creates a samskara, a register in their subconscious, so they avoid that behavior again. And then after all that's done, they're usually reborn in an animal species to then gradually go back to a human form and try again. That's the Vedic system, which we don't want to get into again, right? We just want to get out this time. So he did that, and he gets born as a bull. That bull was purchased by a crippled man who engaged him in his service. For about 7 or 8 years, he was carrying extremely heavy loads. One day, that crippled man had piled a very heavy load onto the back of his bull. Very quickly, he was forcing that bull along when suddenly the bull fell over and became unconscious. So the bull fainted from exertion. Many persons gathered there to see what was happening, feeling sorry for that bull. One pious man bestowed upon that bull the results of some of his pious activities. Seeing that, other persons standing there started remembering their pious activities and offered the results of some of those activities to the bull. In that crowd, there was also one prostitute who did not know if she had ever performed any pious activities. But seeing everybody else offering their pious credits to that bull, she also offered the results of any pious activities she might have performed. After that, the bull died and was taken to the abode of Yamaraj, the god of death. So the bull's there, lying unconscious but still alive, and he's receiving these pious credits. It's a very nice concept that you can donate pious credit. Very nice people to even consider that, right? Like you have this pious credit which would come back as good karma for you, but then you donate that. It's very nice. So these people are very kind society. And so he's getting these credits. And lastly, even a prostitute, she didn't know she had ever done anything, but she whatever, donate that as well to the poor bull. But the bull died anyway. So that bull then, instead of just taking another, because normally you die as an animal, you just take birth immediately. But in this case, he went right back and he was in front of Yamaraj, to the court of the Lord of Death, Yamaraj. Yamaraj is the one who keeps track of your karma. He's the one who lays the law. He's the judge. He'll see what you've done, what you need to get now. He's got everything on record. But he called him forth. He's in front of Yamaraj. There, Yamaraj informed him, "You are now free from the reactions of all your previous sinful deeds, due to the pious credits given to you by the prostitute." So it turns out that of all those pious credits he was getting, it was the prostitute's pious credits that just cleaned his entire sheet. All the negative stuff, everything was cleared up by her. Then he took birth in a very high Brahmana family. So then he had, he still hasn't attained liberation, but it's great karma now. So he takes birth in a great family, a nice birth. In that birth, he also had the extra bonus that he could remember his past lives. After many days, he decided to search out that prostitute who had been the cause of freeing him from his hellish situation. So he wanted to find out, what did that prostitute do that could clear all my sins? After he had found and introduced himself to that lady, he inquired from her, "What were the pious activities performed by you, the fruits of which freed me from my hellish situation?" The prostitute replied to him, "My dear sir, in that cage is a parrot, which recites something every day. Hearing that recitation, my heart has become completely pure. The results of hearing that recitation I had given to you. So this is a very strange story. She's there. She said, look, I don't know. The only thing is that there's this parrot here. And the parrot keeps reciting some things. She doesn't even know what the parrot's reciting. But she's just hearing it. She's reciting, just from hearing this parrot, I've become pure. And that, I just gave you some of that. Thereafter, they both inquired from the parrot about the recitation. So they went to the parrot. This is a special parrot. This is a Purana parrot. So they come to the parrot and they say, they asked the parrot, what are you reciting? The parrot had this blessing. He remembered his past life as well. So that parrot, remembering his previous life, started to narrate his story. So now this is the parrot's story. Previously, I had been a very learned Brahmana. But due to my pride, I used to insult other learned persons. I was also extremely jealous. After I died, I was cast into many hells, and after a long time of suffering, I achieved this body of a parrot. Due to my past sinful activities, my mother and father died when I was a baby. So when he was a baby parrot, his mother and father parrot die. One day, while I was lying on the hot sands with no protection, some rishis, some nice sages, saw me and took me to their ashram and put me in a cage. At that same place, the children of those rishis were learning the recitation of the first chapter of the Bhagavad-gita. And I was hearing them repeat the shlokas. I also started repeating those shlokas with them. Shortly after, one thief stole me from that place and sold me to this pious lady. Sri Vishnu continued, by reciting the first chapter of the Bhagavad-gita, that parrot had become completely pure. And by hearing the recitation, that prostitute also became completely pure. And by receiving some of the pious credits resulting from that recitation, Susharma also became completely pure. So after discussing for some time the glories of the first chapter of Bhagavad-gita, Susharma returned to his home, and the three of them individually engaged in reciting the first chapter of Bhagavad-gita and very quickly attained the supreme destination, Vaikuntha. Anyone who recites, who hears, or studies the first chapter of the Bhagavad-gita will easily cross over the ocean of miseries and attain the service of the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. Very nice, isn't it? So that's the first chapter. So, stick around this channel. Make sure you like and subscribe. And I'll be doing the other chapters of the Gita Mahatmya, of the glories of the other chapters of the Bhagavad-gita. Let me know what you think of this series, if you enjoy that. And I'll hope you have the rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love.